What if I told you guys that here in my hands, I have documents of the Chinese government reaching out to me, trying to pay me to flip me to be more positive about China. In fact, not only just to be more positive about China, but to spread Chinese propaganda, to actually give me money, give me compensation for changing my opinions and values, to actually help brainwash you, my audience, to like the Chinese government. I kid you not, it happened. As you guys know, a lot of my videos are very critical of the Chinese government, and that is because I do not like the trajectory of the way things are going in China in terms of the Chinese government's overreach around the world. Not only that, but the human rights atrocities, the genocide that's currently happening in China. All of these issues have pushed me, a person who lived in China for 10 years, to be quite passionate about the direction that the country I love is going in. But unfortunately, that means the Chinese government is not happy with me at all. In fact, I could tell you some absolute nightmares and horror stories about what they do to try to get me to shut up. But guess what? This is a very unique approach this time. Trying to pay me not to shut up, but to actually spread Chinese propaganda. And this one is pretty sinister, to be honest. Let me read you this email that I got. Hello, I hope this email finds you well. This is Ishmael, Senior Influencer Manager from Social Advisor, and that is socialadvisor.com.cn, which I checked is a real website and a real company, which is a global leading influencer marketing, advertising, and public relations agency. Sounds kind of normal, right? We noticed that you manage an amazing YouTube channel, and you are an excellent creator. Now we're looking for influencer to promote a video about politics and economics. Well, they're not really beating around the bush there, are they? We will provide edited videos you don't need to create again. Just publish the video directly on YouTube. Please check the cooperation details. Then they send a video link. Now the video link here goes to Chinese state media. This is not just some like weird random thing that they decided to put up. They sent me a link to CCTV, which is one of the first and foremost Chinese state media outlets in China. And the video that they want me to post is all about something that China cares very deeply about right now. And that is how George Soros is involved in Ukraine, causing color revolutions around the world, and how the US hegemony will never affect the strong nation of China. It is 20+ minutes of straight up mainlining Chinese propaganda into your veins. In fact, he writes here, the main content of this video is about how George Soros and NGOs are affecting the situation in Ukraine. We'll edit this video and dub it in English. The final video will be about 5 minutes long. And we'll confirm with you whether the content is suitable and modify it before publishing. So they're gonna do all the work, right? It gives me the promotion timeline, which is April 20th to May 20th. And the budget says, please tell us your price on YouTube. A prompt reply would greatly oblige us. Please feel free to contact us anytime. Best regards, right? So I get this email and I'm like, wow, here we go again. You see, this has actually happened before, but in a different way. This other kind of agency tried to get me to post about the origins of COVID and how it actually came from America and not China. It was pure deflection propaganda, and actually how they found COVID first in white-tailed deer populations in the US. Of course, I strung them along as long as possible to see how their operations actually work, and eventually they figured out who I was and they ghosted me. But this time, I decided to see if Ishmael would play ball for a while. I said, hi there, how much is the offer for posting the video? So, it turns out Ishmael actually reached me in 2 different email addresses. One of them, he says, hi there, thank you for your reply. The payment is $500. I also like to ask your price for a dedicated video on the channel, so I can get in touch with you if the video is finished or if there's any other suitable paid sponsorships. To string him along further, I said, can you send me an example of a person who is paid to do this type of video? I want to see an example so I can get an idea. So one of them was $500 and the other one was $1,000. So we're talking about a total of $1,500 to post straight up Chinese propaganda. He says, the price depends on many factors, such as number of followers, video views, client's budget, etc. This type of propaganda is not very common. So he's saying in this agency, they can get me other sponsorships, Doing propaganda videos is not common, but this, in fact, is a propaganda video. He said, here's an example. And then he sends me a propaganda video of the city of Chongqing. So this city that they're trying to promote in kind of central Western China. He sends me a dedicated video about promoting the tourism or whatever there. So I decided to look more into this. You have a situation here where either they're very familiar with my work and they want me to post a different message to flip my audience, or they just didn't do their due diligence and figure out who I was and what kind of content I actually cover. So I looked into this video that they want to pay me to post from Chinese state media. Remember, straight up from the Chinese propaganda mouth outlet. And I looked into it, and it goes into how NGOs are actually, non-government organizations are the biggest trick that the US plays on this entire world. And it goes on to talk about how people like Soros and the USA in general will go around the world and start these color revolutions, and how they're super dangerous and how they're never successful. In the past, they were only successful because the US was a very powerful country, but now has failed and is a doomed state that China can take over and be the strong one on the global stage. And China will never be affected by color revolutions. They will never be affected by any sort of US intervention, because China is the strongest country in the world, and the people, unlike in these other weak countries that get affected by the US, support the Chinese government. They support what the Chinese government does, and they fully back it. So the US can't sneak in there and use their NGOs and all of their secret manipulation techniques. China's too strong for that. So when I watched this video that the Chinese government tried to pay me to post, what I quickly realized was not only is it Chinese and Russian propaganda, but it's chock full of lies, misinformation, and complete fabrication. I mean, this is supposed to be China's top news outlet, and they just made stuff up in the video to prove their point. For example, if we look at this screen here where it shows all of these tweets from supposed American citizens that are either defending Russia or going against Soros or against any intervention in Ukraine, what you'll quickly realize is not only are some of these accounts completely fake, but some of them were just posted twice in the same photo to take up more screen real estate, because a lot of Chinese people don't speak English and won't notice that there's just two of the identical same tweet there. Not only that, let's look at one of these accounts. Edmund Gazarian. First of all, this looks a little suspect when it says #conservative. There is no greater service to this country than the defense of its freedom. A little bit on the nose there. Then you'll realize that when you look up this name, the previous picture that it used for this profile was actually stolen from a campaign poster from a political party within Canada. Not an American at all. Some poor guy named Cole Squire, his photo is being stolen and used for Chinese propaganda fake Twitter accounts. They're making up accounts and stealing other people's photos to make them look legitimate in state broadcasts of the top Chinese state media. What they wanted me to do was take this video, and they would send me a different version of it in English, and then it would be this distilled form, right? So I started looking around, and I had this kind of key window that was opened up where they were gonna release this stuff. And I changed my mind. I realized this is probably not gonna be a video of the CCTV video. Like, it's not gonna be a Chinese dude standing on a stage and then like a 5-minute version of that dubbed into English. This will be more similar to that white-tailed deer video that they tried to get me to post before. So I started going around the internet. I couldn't find any examples of this exact video, but what I did start to find is when I went on alternative media sources. So you have these platforms that host all kinds of different opinions from different viewpoints. You have like Rumble, Truth Social. You had things like Gab and BitChute. All of these alternative, more right-leaning platforms, weirdly enough, started posting something that was very much in line with this exact video. And all of these were posted around April, May, around the same time frame, not the exact time frame, but around the same time frame as the original Chinese video. It seemed like there was some sort of collaborative thing maybe going on between Russia and China to get people on these alternative media fronts to post this kind of message that was really along the same lines. And it was very weird to see, because what I realized was that it's not necessarily this exact video, but it's exactly the same message right? It's the same message that the Chinese government is trying to get me to promote. It's that color revolutions are sponsored by people like George Soros, and how Russia is the right side of the war, and then Ukraine is the evil side of the war, and it's all because of US intervention. And I started seeing the same graphics pop up, and I started seeing the same video message pop up, which is some weird clip from some like anti-Ukraine documentary that was posted a while back. And they all started popping up at the exact same time. They were popping up on these Christian accounts. They were popping up on these right-wing platform accounts. They were popping up on just random no-name accounts on platforms like Rumble. And I realized that there was a common thread here, and that common thread was George Soros, NGOs, and Ukraine. And this tied exactly back to what China was trying to do. Because if you remember back when the whole war in Ukraine started with Russia, China ended up choosing Russia's side. They realized that this is going to be a new kind of front for global conflict, and we have to pick a side. We either say, I'm neutral, or I have nothing to do with this, or I'm gonna choose Russia. And unfortunately, for the rest of the world, China decided to choose Russia. Even though on paper, they said that they had nothing to do with it, they threw all their support behind Putin's regime. You see, China benefits greatly from standing on Russia's side, because if you're Russia's only trading partner and you're kind of silently in the background helping them during this conflict, then you get to be on paper neutral, but at the same time get all the kickbacks from the war. What I've typically seen is that China, with their whole like, communist ideology and all the hammers and sickles and stuff, they tend to try to go for the ultra left. And it's always been a thing. People on the super, super ultra left, I'm not saying all of them support China or China's government or anything like this, but they tend to kind of go towards that crowd. You see a lot of China apologists are tankies, as we call them. They're super pro-authoritarian, super left. But at the same time, now what China is doing is seeing how successful Russian propaganda has been. If you go on these alternative media platforms, you'll just see straight up Russian media, RT, straight up Russian mouthpieces, people that have been caught out over and over again being Russian propaganda, pandering to the ultra right side of things. And what I'm finding is that they're kind of both meeting up here. There's a lot of benefits that they get out of this. If they see an entire populace, an entire part of the population, let's just say the right wing, and they say, oh, typically these people are not supportive of China, but they start using talking points that appeal to that ultra right wing side, just like they've done with the ultra left, then you end up with a population, or at least a subset of the population, that's much more sympathetic to China's cause, right? So if you throw in key buzzwords like George Soros or Ukraine or color revolutions or NGOs or big global shift, this big takeover, the Great Reset, if you start throwing around words like this, then all of a sudden you've gained another subset of the American population that will be more sympathetic to your cause. Therefore, you don't really have an enemy anymore. You have people on the ultra right and the ultra left that are actually kind of starting to warm up to you. And you can see how this propaganda works. Why would the Chinese government reach out to someone like me or influencers in general to try to pay them money to put out this message out there? Well, that's because they're trying to win the hearts and minds of people out there in my country, or actually in any country, where they're trying to target with billions and billions of dollars of propaganda. The Chinese government's budget is outlandish. And the issue that I take with this is that although it's kind of funny and how pathetic they are by using these agents like this, as funny and as stupid and misguided as that is, it's clearly working in some ways, because I am seeing similar messages go out there on different platforms. And number two, as funny as this is, I take great issue with the fact that platforms like YouTube or Facebook or any of these other platforms, to be honest, are allowing this information to proliferate without having it designated as state media. Because think about this. The original source video that they tried to pay me to post has correctly a state label on it. Its content is paid for or affiliated with the Chinese government, right? Therefore, if somebody goes and watches that, they'll say, hey, this is Chinese government propaganda. At least I can have a more informed opinion before I go into this content. But what they're doing is they're trying to skirt that label. The Chinese government hates the state-sponsored label. They hate when anything says sponsored by the Chinese government, because then it immediately takes away any credibility that it had. Because China is one of the least free countries in the world, with one of the worst press freedoms in the world, with some of the highest levels of government censorship, and there is no objective media coming from inside of China. So when you see that state label on places like YouTube or Twitter or whatever, people know what they're getting. When you pay an agent to go out there and try to get influencers like me to go out there and post this message, but kind of in a sly way, in a redressed way, in a repackaged way. You're paying people to go out there and say, this is a legitimate opinion from the Chinese government, but I'm not gonna say it's the Chinese government, and no one will know where it came from. You can see how not just the ultra-right or the ultra-left is susceptible to this, they're trying to penetrate audiences outside of that as well. The more reasonable audience. The vast majority of people, let's be honest, in this country are not ultra-right or ultra-left. The media would like you to believe that, but actually, most people are probably somewhere in the middle, and they're trying to penetrate that as well. By skirting the rules, skirting the terms of services, skirting the laws, and actually sending agents out there from a foreign country to go pay people to go spread Chinese propaganda. To me, that is information warfare. And I'm not saying that lightly, it is information warfare. That is actually the legitimate purpose of the Chinese government. They've said so in documents and speeches. They're trying to sway the world with their new propaganda campaign with billions of dollars behind it. And you, as an audience, are the target of that. I have to go out there and say, people need to be hyper aware if people are approaching them to try to pay them to say things. And number two, be aware as a viewer, if you see anything out there that kind of rubs you the wrong way, you always have to keep in mind that there are agents out there that are doing this. They're using Western platforms, they're using freedom of speech, they're using these to promote the opposite ideal, to promote the opposite message. So be hyper aware of what you're looking at. Be hyper aware of influencers that you might think may have been compromised by something like this. We're living in a new era. It's less about soldiers on the ground and actual like invasion tactics of like traditional war. It's more about trying to win you over. And if they can't win you over, it's more about trying to get you to be more apathetic to a situation. Because if you get apathetic, then you stop caring about that issue. The real goal of these governments with, that have huge propaganda drives, so we're talking about Russia and China, is that it's not just to get you to completely warm up to their governance style. It's to make you lose trust in your own establishments. It's to make you lose trust in your own politicians, not only your own politicians, but really amp up issues that are not necessarily a massive deal, to make people more fragmented, to get people to not be unified. If you have a country that is not unified, then that leaves wide open, fertile ground for another country and their ideals to be able to step in. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. I hope you guys can be more informed about what you see out there. I really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to support my work, go over to patreon.com/Laowinner86. I answer your messages every single day there. It's one of the best parts of my day. I love having the community that we built over there. I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.